on this Thursday night. In freezing temperatures and light snowfall, Korea bids farewell to one-time pro-democracy activist, masterful politician, and the 14th president of the Republic of Korea, Kim Young-sam. We take a look at his life, his role in Korean democracy, the legacy he leaves behind. The two Koreas are in talks today at a border outpost to thrash out a plan for higher-level negotiations. It's a move aimed at building on an agreement in August to improve cross-border relations. And Volkswagen cheated. Korea is recalling over 125,000 Volkswagen cars based on its own test results. Volkswagen intentionally manipulated a diesel emissions device in vehicles with an older engine. We have the latest. News Center begins right now. We want to welcome our viewers here in Korea and around the world. I'm Moon Connyoung. You're watching News Center. This country bids farewell today, farewell to late former President Kim Young-sam. Korea's 14th president passed away in the early hours of Sunday morning. Kim's landmark 1992 election victory ended decades of military rule. In freezing temperatures and snow flurries, a state funeral took place today at the lawn outside of the National Assembly, where Kim was sworn in as South Korea's president in early 1993, ending decades of military leadership. Arirang News parliamentary correspondent Jiwon was there.
Thousands of mourners stood under a light dusting of snow to pay their final respects to former President Kim Young-sam at the state funeral held for him on Thursday at the National Assembly. Prime Minister Jiwon, who headed the funeral organizing committee, delivered an address on behalf of the nation.
The spirit of Kim Young-sam will live on here at the National Assembly. We will aspire to build a peaceful and prosperous country in line with the late president's wishes.
The ceremony was invitation only, but members of the public were able to watch from a distance. It was the first state funeral held in Korea after the State Funeral Act was revised a year ago to allow state funerals for national leaders. The eulogy was given by Kim Soo-han, who was part of the Sangdo-dong faction led by Kim Young-sam. Kim Soo-han served as the National Assembly Speaker during the last 2 years of Kim's presidency, and he currently heads the Kim Young-sam Center for Democracy.
As a true civilian politician, Kim loved and served the people. He sacrificed his life for democracy and civil rights. It's impossible to imagine you could leave us behind so soon.
Afterward, the leaders of three religions, Protestant, Catholic, and Buddhist, performed last rites for the deceased. The rituals were followed by flower offerings given by the former president's relatives, government officials, and foreign dignitaries. Former President Kim Young-sam will be remembered by many Koreans as a proud pro-democracy leader who fought against militant regimes, as well as the first civilian president following decades of military rule. Jiwon, Arirang News.
There were reports yesterday that it was highly unlikely for President Park Geun-hye to attend the funeral ceremony due to heavy cold. As it turns out, she was among the solemn crowd today, bidding farewell to a predecessor by 2 decades, to a strong opponent of her father, to a one-time political foe, to a senior politician who paved the road to democracy for her generation politicians. Our presidential office correspondent Hwang Sung-hee reports.
In freezing cold weather, President Park watched as the hearse carrying the body of former President Kim Young-sam left Seoul National University Hospital in central Seoul. She offered her condolences to the late president's son, and he thanked her for attending the ceremony despite her ill health. President Park has been suffering from a high fever and a cold following her recent 10-day tour that took her to Turkey, the Philippines, and Malaysia. Her health prevented her from attending the state funeral that was held on the grounds of the National Assembly. President Park's doctor had recommended that she refrain from any outdoor activities. The presidential office of Cheongwade said that despite the doctor's advice, the president decided to go to the hospital to pay her respects to the late president. Earlier in the day, the president's illness had forced her to cancel a planned appearance at a forum on the creative economy. President Park will leave for a 7-day trip on Sunday that will take her to Paris for the UN Climate Change Conference, and then to Prague for a summit with the leaders of the Visegrad Group countries, including the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Late President Kim Young-sam, without doubt, leaves behind a political legacy. He was an important figure in South Korea's pro-democracy movement and a peaceful power transfer to civilian rule in a country that had been marked by military coups. Who was Kim Young-sam and how has it changed Korea's modern politics? Well, joining us live via Skype is Dr. Robert E. Kelly, professor of political science at Busan National University. Bob, good to see you again.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
Now, what kind of a political legacy does Kim Young-sam leave behind? I mean, how has he changed or shaped Korean politics?
Sure. I think Kim did sort of 4 big things. The first is that he was really the first genuinely democratically elected president in Korea. Right, there's sort of a lot of dispute about how independent 1987 was. There was still a lot of influence by the military. So Kim was really the first one to be sort of elected without any kind of external influence. I think that was sort of the big thing. The second thing, and this is important because of the Asian financial crisis, that Kim is also one of the first to make an effort to try to rein in the chaebol. This didn't really work out, right? His son got in trouble for corruption, which sort of damaged the anti-corruption drive. But that was the first effort. And this, of course, has been a big issue in Korean politics for decades, right? Sort of what exactly the regulatory environment for the chaebol should be. And then finally, I think the other big thing that he did is he dissuaded the United States from attacking North Korea. This has actually turned out to be quite controversial. My understanding is that Kim has actually come to regret that the United States did not actually launch airstrikes because the North Korean nuclear program has actually gone much further, I think, than many people expected. But, I mean, many of your viewers will remember that in 1994, this was a big deal. Many people thought there was going to be a second Korean War.
Sure.
And he was instrumental in encouraging Bill Clinton not to attack.
Right, and I do think that he said it in his memoir that he regrets that. Now, many say that this is the end of the two Kim era. Of course, two Kims being late President Kim Dae-jung, whose presidency immediately followed that of Kim Young-sam, and a lifelong political rival. How would you compare and contrast the two?
Yeah, I definitely think rival is a good way to put it. I mean, we know that the two of them went back and forth and back and forth. I think the second Kim Dae-jung, was a little bit disappointed when the first Kim sort of lined up with the conservatives in 1990. I think this was pretty controversial, and I think for many people in the South Korean left, this suggested that Kim Young-sam sort of sold out the ideals that helped get him, into office later and things like that. I think he's sort of a controversial figure on the left. I do think, though, sort of globally, I think that Kim Dae-jung will have a far longer reputation, a far wider reputation, because he initiated the Sunshine Policy, he got the Nobel Prize, right? I mean, I do think that the latter Kim sort of trumped, if you will, the former Kim. I think Kim Young-sam was something of an incremental sort of status quo figure. And I think it was good for getting Korea sort of out of the military age, sort of a period into sort of democracy. But I'm not sure if he was really a transformative leader. I would say Kim Dae-jung was more that.
Right. How will the rest of the world remember, one, the pro-democracy activist, the politician Kim Young-sam, and two, Kim Young-sam, the 14th president of the Republic of Korea?
Sure. Well, when we study democratization movements, we always have sort of these important figures like Kim Dae-jung and Kim Young-sam, or Aung San Suu Kyi in Southeast Asia. So we have sort of these important figures, Nelson Mandela, who sort of come forward and really sort of crystallize the movement. And I think Kim will be remembered for that. I think so that's sort of the upside. I think his presidency is a little bit more mixed, right? I think his presidency, he tried to rein in the table, it didn't really work, and then the Asian financial crisis came later, and I think he got some blame for that, right? I think his presidency is sort of a mixed bag. So I think on the upside, you've got the democratic activist part, and I think that will really anchor his reputation both abroad and in Korea's history textbooks. As a president, my sense is sort of is a mixed bag, that people see him as sort of like a sort of so-so figure, a good transitional figure, but not really like one of Korea's great democratically elected presidents.
Right, and we will have to wait further as to how he will be, I guess, written in history books for the future generations to remember him by. All right, Robert E. Kelly, professor of political science at Busan National University. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me again, Karen.
Well, former President Kim Young-sam, many close to him say, was quite a character. He has left behind many sayings that clearly reflects the man that he was. Our Kim Min-ji gives us a rundown.
대도무문 literally means a great path has no door. The late President Kim Young-sam enjoyed using this expression, conveying the message that if you go the just way, there should be no big hurdles on your path.
어려운 때 정도로 가면 반드시 성공한다는 그런 의미라고 들고.
When Kim was expelled from the National Assembly in 1979, he said, "Dawn will come even if the rooster is strangled," a quote that reflects his tenacity in achieving the country's democratization. He also likened democracy to climbing a mountain. Kim said many give up while they climb a mountain. It's the same with democracy. It's a difficult road. The former leader is also remembered for his hard words toward Japan. He said, "We will teach them to have manners once and for all," in regards to Japanese politicians who defended Japan's wartime atrocities. And as he ended his term, which comes after he accepted a massive bailout in the aftermath of the 1997-98 Asian financial crisis, he said, "Honor was short, but the period of pain and anguish was long."
사태가 이렇게 된 책임은 오직 대통령인 저에게 있으므로 저는 어떠한 책임도 마다하지 않겠습니다.
Kim called life a fight for freedom, a fight for democracy, a fight for justice. And before ending that fight, his last legacy left to us is unity and reconciliation. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Joining me now in the studio is our senior political correspondent Park Jiwon. She was on the ground reporting the entire day from the state funeral in Parliament all the way to the National Cemetery where late former President Kim Young-sam was once and for all laid to rest. Jiwon, what was it like? Tell us, how was the atmosphere?
Good evening, Konyang. Well, as our colleague Ji Myung-gi reported earlier, about 10,000 people attended the state funeral at the National Assembly, and during the ceremony, snow fell heavily and beautifully. I guess it helped the attendants at the funeral better commemorate the late president's lifelong contributions towards democracy. After the funeral, the late pro-democracy activist and 14th president of the Republic of Korea was laid to rest in peace at the Seoul National Cemetery this afternoon. During the 70-minute-long ceremony, there were offerings of flowers and incense, and the casket was interred, and Kim was laid to rest. Only about 250 people were allowed to attend the burial ceremony, including family members and friends and politicians who were close to him. But before the funeral procession arrived at the cemetery, they made a tour across Kim's neighborhood. The hearse carrying Kim's body passed through the late president's neighborhood of Sangdo-dong in southern Seoul. Then it headed toward the Kim Young-sam Memorial Library, which is still under construction. The detour was meant to commemorate the late pro-democracy leader's lifelong contributions to the nation.
Jiwon, what's almost striking for me to see is that these politicians, political leaders, politicians, coming together who in fact fight, tooth and nail almost on every issue across the aisle in Parliament, come together and in unison praising late former President Kim Young-sam.
I couldn't agree more, Konyang. As a reporter covering the National Assembly, it is obviously a rare scene to watch that both rival parties are making one voice. And as we witnessed in earlier national mourning days, lawmakers from both parties have paid their respects in groups to the late president, either at the hospital or at an altar set up at the National Assembly. But each party actually focuses Kim's characteristics that fit into their own political interests. For example, ruling Saenuri Party emphasized that Kim had always respected the parliament and believed that conflicts should be resolved through the assembly, by this saying that the ruling party pressures the opposition bloc to pass currently pending economy-related bills. The opposition bloc, meanwhile, says the late leader would never have accepted the incumbent administration's attempt to issue state-authored history textbooks, as the late leader himself took a series of measures to clear off the vestiges of Japanese imperialism and put leaders of the nation's past military coup on trials during his presidency.
Now, Jiwon, we heard that reportedly the last words or message from President Kim Young-sam to his junior politicians were harmony and unity. I wonder if, if that can be realized, what lies ahead for us?
Well, both parties have issued their own official statement today saying that they will all inherit Kim's counsels on unity and harmony. And we just hope that politicians can put into practice the late president's last words. Take a look.
Former President Kim once said that the era of rage and opposition and the heroic era of struggles are gone. Following Kim's message, politics of reconciliation and cooperation need to be restored. Also, the political landscape could be changing into a more democratic horizontal style, where a diverse number of politicians would try to persuade the public as well as negotiate with one another.
Right, so this could be a turning point for Korea's politics. I think another point worth noting could be North Korea's response to the passing of late former President Kim Young-sam, or lack thereof. In fact, North Korea and its state media have stated practically mum about this whole thing, which is in stark contrast to when, Presidents Roh Moo-hyun and Kim Dae-jung passed away back in 2009. Back then, the state media reported immediately, and then North Korean leader Kim Jong-il sent condolences. And some experts view this as a show of North Korea's discontent about late former President Kim Young-sam's North Korea policy.
Indeed, that's what some experts are saying.
All right, Jiwon, great reporting. Thank you so much for that. The two Koreas are holding working-level talks at the inter-Korean border on this Thursday. North and South Korean officials met for talks earlier this Thursday. It's roughly 17 past 10 p.m. here in Seoul, and the talks are still ongoing. The talks today are a fresh attempt at dialogue between the two Koreas, which have all but cut off ties since 2010, when a South Korean Navy ship was destroyed by a torpedo fired from a North Korean submarine. Pyongyang to this day denies any role. It's also the fruit of a long time in the works, with Seoul having to wait 2 months for Pyongyang to respond to its proposals. Will this working-level talks lead way to higher-level talks in the near future? Well, our Song Ji-sun has been on the story since early morning. She joins us from Seoul's Unification Ministry. Ji-sun, do we have any news from the delegation at the border outpost?
Good evening, Kanyang. The plenary session of the meeting began at 12:50 this afternoon and lasted for 90 minutes, with the two Koreas exchanging proposals for the high-level talks. And they were represented by 3 different officials, and Korea's side was represented by Kim Gi-yoon, who is the chief official for Inter-Korean Dialogue, and Hwang Chul from the North, who is a senior official at North Korea's Unification Agency. And as the delegations are meeting on the north side of the border village of Panmunjom, they are now giving a real-time updates for us here in Seoul, but the talks are ongoing at the moment. And speaking of which, today's meeting started nearly 2.5 hours late than scheduled, which was 10:30 a.m., due to technical glitches with the communication lines at the venue. Same thing happened in the previous talks in 2013. This working-level talks is held to prepare and lay the groundwork for high-level talks, including the agenda, venue, schedule, and rank of the participants. Officials at Seoul's Unification Ministry told reporters that there are outstanding differences in the stances in all aspects, but added that gaps could be narrowed if they go on with negotiations. Seoul has proposed ministerial-level talks between Unification Minister Hong Yong-pyo and his North Korean counterpart Kim Yang-gun, but we'll have to see if the North approves that. And what to include on the agenda could be another stumbling block. On top of Seoul's priority list is the reunions for war-separated families. The South Korean government wants them to be held on a regular basis, but North Korea is more interested in getting South Korea back to resume its tours at Kumgang Resort. And Seoul halted tours to the area after a South Korean tourist was shot dead by a North Korean soldier in 2008. And today's talks are in line with an agreement reached on August 25th, in which the two sides pledged to improve inter-Korean relations and expand civilian exchanges. And last month's family reunions were also part of that agreement. And the two Koreas will continue to reach a common ground and reach some sort of an agreement this evening to make the high-level talks happen as soon as possible. But if they fail to do so, another following-up working-level talks could have to be rescheduled for later this month or within this year. Back to you, Anya.
Well, Jiwon, hopefully the working-level talks can make progress so that it could move up the ladder and eventually lead to a meeting between figures high in ranking enough to make significant progress, I suppose, or improvement in cross-border relations. Thanks, Ji-san. Hang in there. That was our Song Ji-sun live from the nation's unification ministry. Well, whatever that outcome may be, the talks will lay the foundation for future inter-Korean talks, and that is why we keep a close eye on this. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Whether the two Koreas will hold high-level talks next month depends on how well Thursday's working-level meeting turned out. The two sides are likely to discuss the timing, venue, agenda, and who will be leading the high-level talks. But the issue of who's leading inter-Korean talks has continuously been a contentious one between the two Koreas. The main focus of the high-level talks is also a conundrum the two sides have to work out. Despite these hurdles, Thursday's talks could be a significant sign of improvement in inter-Korean relations, especially since they turned sour over a deadly landmine blast at the border in August, which wounded 2 South Korean soldiers.
If the two sides strike a deal in the working-level talks, heightened tensions between the two Koreas will ebb, while inter-Korean talks are likely to be held on a regular basis. This, in turn, could greatly help resolve some of the agendas held by the two sides, including holding regular meetings for war-torn families and the resumption of tours in North Korea's Mount Kumgang.
The expert added, though, that Thursday's talks may not be enough and both sides should engage in more dialogues to finally strike a comprehensive deal. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Well, whenever these kind of inter-Korean talks happen, those who have their closest eyes on are those who have families on that side of the border. Well, some in hope and some in despair now, but this is their story.
만나고 왔다는 기쁨보다 남은 생에 아버지에 대한 그리움이 더 클 것 같습니다.
만나고 싶어요. 그건 정말 지금 말로 표현할 수 없고 이제 눈물만 나는 거죠.
이북에서 확실히 신분을 보장할 수 있는 사람, 또 이남에서 보장할 수 있는 사람 서로 왕래를 좀 하면은 그저 독일 베를린처럼 자연이 무너지지 않을까.
할아버지하고 아버지가 살던 집과 또 그 선대 묘고터인데 고향 땅을 한번 그래서 좀 가보고 싶은 그런 마음이에요. 지금.
It's very touching and heartwarming to see families reunite for the first time in 50, 60 years. I wish both Koreas to be reunited, but I know there are a lot of difficulties right now. I hope that the separated families issue will get resolved soon.
War-separated families are quite advanced in years now, which means they don't have much time left. I wish the government will hold talks more often with North Korea, so separated families can meet regularly.
I hope that the two Koreas will cooperate more closely so that there will be more opportunities for separated families to reunite.
Global commodity prices are at a 13-year low due to the sputtering global economy. That in turn is leading to a supply glut and bankruptcy at many raw material companies. Our Kwon So-ah has the details.
Weak demand due to slowing growth in the global economy, especially in the world's second-largest economy, China, and the ongoing uncertainty about a potential U.S. rate hike are cited as the main reasons for a price drop in commodities. The Commodity Research Bureau Index, which measures the general direction of commodity prices, dove down to 183.4 earlier this week. That's the lowest since November 2002 and a decline of 61% from July 2008, right before the global financial crisis. The formula includes prices of copper, steel, and crude oil. That in turn has led to an oversupply at many raw materials companies, which are struggling to pay off their debt. According to data from Standard & Poor's, 99 global companies have defaulted so far this year, a record high since the global financial crisis in 2009. 40 of those were in the raw materials industry. The number of commodity firms hit by a credit rating downgrade by S&P this year was 155, compared to the 99 companies in 2009. The situation isn't looking much better here in Korea, as recent local data shows that more than 30% of downgraded companies were commodities firms.
Normally, the drop in commodity prices has positive effects on Korea, as it's a big importer of raw materials. But when the countries that produce these raw materials, such as Russia, the Middle East, and Brazil, end up struggling, that in turn hurts Korea's exports. So, all in all, the price decline has limited effects on Korea.
The expert added if the U.S. does raise interest rates in December, as widely expected, it will strengthen the greenback, thus prolonging the global drop in commodity prices. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The Korean government announced today the results of an investigation on Volkswagen cars sold in this country. The verdict? The German automaker was found guilty of installing emission cheating software in its vehicles. And now, 125,000 cars are to be recalled. A record fine of $12.3 million has been issued, and compensation has been ordered to be given to customers. Kwon Jang-ho reports.
After an investigation lasting over 50 days, Korea's Ministry of Environment confirmed what many have already expected.
After testing 7 cars from 6 different Volkswagen models that received emissions certification before September last year, we've confirmed the existence of emissions rigging software.
The investigation revealed that so far, only the Jiwon model with the EA189 engine was equipped with the emissions testing defeat device. The ministry has ordered for all vehicles running on this engine in Korea to be recalled. That's over 125,000 cars, comprising 15 different car models. The models include the Volkswagen Beetle and the Audi's Q5, Q3 and A4. Sales of these models have also been suspended. The investigation on other car models is still ongoing. The Transport Ministry will now start its own inquiry on whether the cheat device also affected fuel efficiency and safety. The government has demanded Volkswagen to provide plans for recalls by January the 6th. A fine of $12.3 million has also been given, and government officials said they have asked the German auto giant to issue reimbursements to the car owners affected in the form of cash or coupons, which have been offered in the US and Canada. Industry experts have praised the investigation, but warned the government must now follow through in effectively recalling the vehicles and compensating the affected car owners.
It does look like the investigation has been very thorough, but as it is the case with most of the other countries affected at the moment, details for compensation need to be drawn up more comprehensively. It's also important that owners of cars to be recalled go through with it for environmental reasons.
Now that the government has confirmed the existence of emissions rigging software in cars sold here in Korea, the time has come for Volkswagen to pay the price here as well. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
The standoff between Russia and Turkey intensifies. Neither country is backing down after Turkey shot down a Russian fighter jet this week. Bruce Harrison joins me live in the studio. Now, Bruce, what kind of action is each side taking?
Hello, Konyang. Russia's moved an anti-aircraft missile system to Syria, it says, to protect its jets, and it's also heavily bombed the area where its plane went down. Russia also says it's going to keep flying missions near the Turkish border. Turkey, meanwhile, has made no apologies for shooting down the plane and maintains it was just defending its borders and gave the Russian jet fair warning.
Well, so Bruce, tell me, aside from military escalation, what other impacts can we expect from this clash?
What Turkey may notice first and the most eventually is an impact on its economy. There's been talk of shutting down flights between the two countries and pulling tourists out of Turkish resorts. Russia's first move, though, has been to curb food imports. Russia ordered a food safety group to tighten checks on Turkish food at the border and production facilities within the country as well.
I have informed the government of the Russian Federation that unfortunately, on average, 15% of Turkish agricultural goods do not meet Russian norms.
This conflict extends far beyond Turkish produce, though. It's one of the most serious public clashes between Russia and a NATO ally since the 1950s. Western allies are calling for calm, especially considering many are directly involved in the fighting against Islamic State, whether it be training rebel forces or bombing the Islamic militants. Russia said it has no intention of fighting a war with Turkey. That would distract from its main goal, which is resolving the conflict in Syria. And to Russia, that means defeating Islamic State militants and keeping President Bashar Assad in power in Syria. Pope Francis celebrates Mass with tens of thousands of people in Nairobi, Kenya. This is the Pope's first visit to Africa, where 1 in 5 people is Catholic. His trip's partly aimed at bridging divisions between Christians and Muslims. He spoke to a group of religious leaders in Kenya where, like his next stop, Uganda, people have been victims of Islamist attacks.
All too often, young people are being radicalized in the name of religion to sow discord and fear and to tear at the very fabric of our societies.
The Pope also visited university students in the Kenyan capital. He told them to build a more just society. After visiting Uganda next, he'll travel to the Central African Republic to continue spreading his message of peace and unity.
Well, Bruce, in the U.S., it's the Thanksgiving holidays coming up, and U.S. President Barack Obama performed a popular White House tradition sparing the life of a Thanksgiving turkey. Now, I see here that he was extra merciful today.
Extra merciful, that's correct. He spared 2 turkeys, actually. Their names are Honest and Abe, a nice throwback to a famous president. They're both 18-week-old, 40-pound turkeys. Must have been tough to part of them. They sound delicious. They were handpicked by school children on a farm in California. Obama only formally pardoned Aim, who he nicknamed Totus, the turkey of the United States, a play on words of POTUS, the President of the United States.
For months, there has been a fierce competition between a bunch of turkeys trying to win their way into the White House. Some of you caught that.
Obama said if Abe is unable to fulfill his duties, Honest would take his place.
Abe, that is.
Oh, that's correct, yes.
Yes.
Somebody needs to be in charge.
Right. So this was the 68th year of this silly but beloved tradition.
Yeah, Obama's 6th time doing it. He made a joke. He says, time flies, but turkeys don't. His daughters were there. It's a bad dad joke, I think.
Right. I will let that one pass. All right, Bruce, thank you so much for today. Well, if yesterday we saw sleet, today, yes, definitely. Heavy white snow fell in Seoul. Although it was freezing cold, it was beautifully white today. For details, let's go over to our Jiwon. Jiwon?
Good evening. It was a cold and snowy day here in Seoul. It didn't snow much in the capital, while southwest regions saw heavy snowfall with heavy snow alerts in place. And snow is forecasted to continue till tomorrow morning, so if you're in these regions, be cautious of heavy snow. But elsewhere, we'll have partly sunny skies tomorrow. It was freezing today. Low in the capital was -3, but due to wintry wind, it felt like -8 this morning. And icy cold weather continues for tomorrow. The low in the capital will kick off at -6, and even Daegu will get up to low of -1. So sub-zero morning lows to start out the day for many parts of the country, including regions in the color of blue. But southern regions like Gwangju and Busan will have a slightly milder daily low. Will kick out at 1 and 3 for Jeju Island. And positive daily highs are expected for here in the capital, thankfully. It will climb up to 2. Daejeon will peak out at 4, 6 for Daegu, and 10 down in Busan. We are going through unseasonably cold weather. Hang in there just for a few more days. Things will get back to normal by Sunday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
At a time of deepening malaise, late President Kim Jong-sam's life stands as a reminder that democracy in Korea is the product of a long struggle and that constant vigilance is needed to protect it. That is our broadcast on this Thursday night. I'm Moon Connyoung. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we hope to see you right back here, same time tomorrow on NewsCenter.